Thank you for taking the time to view this online presentation regarding Sensible Spokane's 2012 Citizens Initiative. I am your host as well as the author and sponsor of Spokane I-1, Ian Moody. I'll just start out by telling you a little bit about myself. I've been a long-term care provider since 1997. I've worked as a certified nurse's assistant for various populations for over 10 years, including the developmentally disabled, mental health, and aging and end-of-life clientele. So I've witnessed the benefits and limitations of modern medicine and pharmaceuticals firsthand. There is definitely an unmet demand for cannabis in aging and end-of-life populations. I've been a cannabis producer and provider since 2001. I bought my first seeds from Mark Emery in 2000 and began growing marijuana as a hobby and for personal therapeutic use. They were Supreme Skunk from British Columbia Seed Company, a very strong couch lock indica, and I grew them in a 2x4 by 6 foot grow cab I built myself. I've been hooked on the culture and lifestyle ever since and have been doing my part to educate others, advocate for positive reform, and provide to those in need. I've been the executive director of Spokane Designated Provider, a nonprofit cannabis patient advocacy and support group, since 2008. The arrest and prosecution of a close friend and the lack of safe, consistent, and reliable sources of medicine inspired me to create an organization which could create better methods to provide medicine to patients and also at the same time work to reform marijuana laws. In that same spirit, I founded Citizens for a Sensible Spokane in 2009, a grassroots political committee focused on local cannabis policy reform. We submitted our first lowest law enforcement priority ordinance in 2010, but withdrew it in support of Sensible Washington's I-1068. This was an initiative which would have removed all penalties related to marijuana in Washington State. Our second attempt in 2011 was overshadowed by statewide efforts again on behalf of Sensible Washington and New Approach Washington. That combined with the DEA raids that took place last spring in the middle of our petition drive, ending up sending our community and our support underground. So we hope that this year, and now that we've got some distractions out of the way, I hope to put together a tight-knit group of volunteers that are ready to get the job done and, keep focus on the goal and keep blinders on to some of the distractions that can go on around you in this movement. And now we'll just go into the initiative itself, and you can follow along. On our website, you can download a copy of the petition itself if you go on to our website at www.sensiblespokane.org and then click on the tab Proposals, and then you can just scroll down and you'll see a PDF copy of the initiative. You can just click on it and take a look at it, and you can follow along with me here. So the initiative itself, you can read along here with me. There is adopted a new chapter 1015B marijuana regulation to Title 10 of the Spokane Municipal Code to read as follows. Chapter 1015B marijuana regulation. So this just gives us a look at where in the Spokane Municipal Code this ordinance will be placed if it's passed by the people, along with the title of the ordinance. Again, that's marijuana regulation. Continuing on to Section 1015B.020 marijuana regulation. The City of Spokane shall establish a system to license and regulate marijuana as soon as possible under Washington state law. Now, let's say that voters of Washington approve Initiative 502 this November. In that case, this section will be expanded upon by the City Council with input from a Community Oversight Committee, which I'll talk about in a second. However, if 502 fails this fall, the Spokane City Council will be tasked with developing regulations for medical marijuana. This is basically what has taken place in cities such as San Francisco, Oakland, and Seattle. Similar initiatives passed which did not stipulate medical cannabis from, say, illicit marijuana. However, based on the passage of these measures, local officials have taken steps to regulate medical marijuana, providing safe access within their jurisdiction. So this is just kind of a general catch-all for marijuana, period, whether Washington State decides to fully legalize it or whether it's just for medical purposes. This section just allows the citizens of Spokane to say they want it to be regulated. Moving forward to section 1015B.030, the lowest law enforcement priority policy. And I'll just read verbatim here. Section A, the police chief and city attorney shall make the investigation, arrest, and prosecution of adult marijuana offenses the lowest law enforcement priority. Section B, the lowest law enforcement priority policy shall not apply to the following: distribution or sale of marijuana to minors, possession, use, distribution, sale, or cultivation of marijuana by minors, distribution, sale, cultivation, or use of marijuana on public property, or driving under the influence of marijuana. So a lot of this is pretty self-explanatory. It basically says that marijuana will be the lowest priority. Any other crime will take precedent above marijuana for the Spokane Police Department. Part B is basically to assure folks that this will not become a free-for-all or a Woodstock or anything. It's it's not going to allow children to use marijuana. It's not going to allow people to drive under the influence. It just means that possession is no longer going to be an issue for the Spokane Police Department. And then the second half of section 1015B.030 is a non-cooperation provision, and I'll just read this for you verbatim from the text. Part C, the lowest law enforcement priority policy shall apply to cooperating with county, state, or federal agent to arrest, cite, investigate, prosecute, or seize property from adults for marijuana offenses included in the lowest law enforcement priority policy. Part D, Spokane law enforcement officers and other city employees shall not accept or renew formal deputizations or commissioning by a federal law enforcement agency if such deputization or commissioning will include investigating, citing, arresting, or seizing property from adults for marijuana offenses included in the lowest law enforcement priority policy. This is basically, just what it sounds like. Local law enforcement won't be spending any more resources on adult-related marijuana offenses if this ordinance is passed. Let's say, for instance, if 502 is passed and the feds decide to take action against cannabis business owners in Spokane, they won't receive assistance from local law enforcement. If not, this provision will bar Spokane Police Department from assisting the feds in medical marijuana cases from here on out. So this is protection all around, and currently the Spokane Police Department has one drug task force officer who works with the DEA, the Washington State Patrol, and confidential informants, or CIs, to investigate drug crimes in Spokane. The same officer was in charge of investigating local dispensaries. If this ordinance is passed, these resources will be freed up to investigate and prosecute cases involving harder drugs. And, this individual will no longer have to waste their time investigating medical marijuana providers and dispensary owners. Next, we have section 10.15b.040, the Community Oversight Committee. And this committee will be appointed by the mayor with approval by the council, and it will consist of 9 voting members, 2 council members, 1 resident from each district, 1 cannabis-related business owner, 1 cannabis patient, 1 cannabis policy reform advocate, and 1 drug abuse treatment and prevention counselor. There will also be 3 non-voting liaisons sent to the meeting to provide input to the voting committee members. That'll be the Spokane Police Department, the City Attorney's Office, and the Eastern Washington Cannabis Association. So all committees in Spokane are selected by the mayor with approval from the council, so there is no getting around that. I tried to assemble a committee that could address the needs and concerns of various stakeholders in Spokane. while still maintaining a strong presence for those directly affected by the issue. Like I said, there's a cannabis patient, a cannabis policy reform advocate, and a cannabis-related business owner, as well as the non-voting liaison that'll be sent by the Eastern Washington Cannabis Association. So this will give local cannabis stakeholders a strong seat at the table. Section 1015B.040 continued. Committee responsibilities. Responsibilities of the committee shall include ensuring timely implementation of this chapter, make recommendations to Spokane City Council regarding appropriate regulations. Again, regardless of whether it is, medical or recreational marijuana, this committee will deliberate or make recommendations to the City Council. The cannabis community has a pretty strong seat at the table, like I said, to make sure that our needs and concerns are addressed. But there also will be a strong presence from just various members of the community, 2 council members, 1 member from each district, and a drug addiction abuse treatment counselor will also have a seat at the table. So I think it'll be a pretty balanced committee, and they'll be able to direct the council appropriately. Finally, we have section 10.15b.050, notice to state and federal officials. So what's going to happen, this seems kind of like a formality, but the city clerk will, on an annual basis, will send a letter to all of our representatives in Olympia and Washington, D.C., and this letter will state that, quote, the citizens of Spokane have passed an initiative to regulate marijuana and to deprioritize adult marijuana offenses, and request that the federal and Washington state governments take immediate steps to enact similar laws. So even though this is pretty much just a formality, it is also quite significant in the sense that essentially the entire city of Spokane will be lobbying officials at every level of government to reform marijuana laws. So it'll be quite significant. And now I just want to touch on the methodology, and this is just how I arrived at this draft, how I arrived at this ordinance as it's written. And it's been a long process. It's been 4 years in the making, if not longer. And so it's included exhaustive research of similar initiatives passed in other localities such as Seattle and various cities and counties throughout California. It's included formal communications with the city attorney's office, including legal reviews of multiple marijuana-related initiatives, and extensive communication with and feedback from local stakeholders, leadership, press, and the public at large. And so I'll provide links to many of these documents and publications, and if you're at the meeting, there'll be handouts to document the history through which I arrived at this initiative as it's written. And now for the petition drive itself, we have 2 options. Option A, we can collect 9,393 signatures by July 8th, 2012 to put this petition on the November 2012 ballot. Or option B, we can collect 3,131 signatures by March 6, 2013 to put this on the November 2013 ballot. So if we include a 30% margin of error, we end up with needing approximately 12,212 signatures to make it on the November 2012 ballot and 4,070 signatures to make it on the November 2013 ballot. So taking a different perspective of that, for option A to be successful, we'd have to collect 110 signatures a day, 7 days a week between now and July 8th. Or if we want to be successful with option B, on average, we'd have to collect 11 signatures a day, 7 days a week between now and March 6th of next year. So in my opinion and experience as a petitioner, we aren't going to make it on the ballot this year. It's a lot of signatures, and our volunteer base is just pretty much non-existent right now. We're going to be limited to a small group of dedicated and loyal individuals that are going to be focused on getting the job done. Unless we can bring in a large donation to pay for signature gatherers, I feel that it's best that we pace ourselves and aim for 2013. The issue isn't going away, and in fact, it will probably only get more complicated. So it's important that we begin working toward the future regardless. So this ordinance is going to be important for Spokane no matter what. Again, there are going to be some challenges. First and foremost, many of you are aware, saturation of marijuana-related petitions. So there's already one statewide petition circulating currently, and there are 2 more on the way, I believe, and these are all coming from people who are former members of Sensible Washington over in Seattle. They don't have any volunteers, they don't have any money, and they really don't have any time, so I'm afraid that voters are going to get fatigued with this issue. So we're going to have to find a way to convince the public as to the necessity of supporting our local effort in the face of some of these other petitions that might be out there, so we can work on that as we move along. Another challenge we'll be facing is the fact that the medical cannabis community is currently estranged. Following the DEA raids last year, the local cannabis community has become estranged and fractured, and is, it's slowly healing and regrouping. And so we don't want to do anything to further divide the community. So we don't want this to be a big extravaganza where we, put out a lot of propaganda and press and pit people against one another. We just want to work on getting this passed, and the passage of this ordinance should provide for a more transparent and cooperative environment here in Spokane than what we've seen over the past few years. Another thing that could cause problems here in Spokane is the conservative political environment. We currently have a conservative mayor, a 4-3 conservative majority on the council, and a conservative sheriff who continues to bust marijuana grow operations here in Spokane County. All have made it clear that they do not support full legalization, nor do they support a cottage medical marijuana industry. They do support medical marijuana, but they made it clear that they believe it should be produced by pharmaceutical companies and dispensed by pharmacies. So this ordinance is going to give us a chance to, give our community, to let them know that we disagree, and that we want marijuana to remain in its natural form. And we want it to be provided by local providers to local patients, or local recreational users, if that's the case. And finally, in the past, many marijuana-related initiative campaigns have put the cart before the horse, so to speak. Conducting these huge public relations campaigns prior to even collecting the necessary number of signatures to get it on the ballot. So really, if we don't get this on the ballot, it's merely an idea on a piece of paper. And so, first and foremost, our goal is to get this measure on the ballot, and then the rest of the campaign should fall into place after that. It'll take on a lot more significance. We'll have a lot more clout. So like I said, let's not put the cart before the horse this time. We'll get it on the ballot first and go from there. Now the campaign itself, again, I've said it, can't stress it enough. The petition drive itself is going to be critical. We have to get it on the ballot. So in order to be a voting member of the committee, the steering committee, and voting members on the steering committee will make decisions by consensus regarding the rest of the issues concerning this campaign. For instance, public relations, interactions with the media and the press, interactions with business and nonprofits, getting them to join our campaign or our alliance or endorse us, fundraising, and then community building. Committee members will make decisions by consensus on how to address those issues. But in order to be a committee member, you must commit to 8 hours minimum of petitioning per month in high traffic areas. and that would include grocery stores. In my experience, Walmart, Safeway, Fred Meyer, these are the best places to get signatures. You get everybody goes to the grocery store. So you're going to have to commit to at least 8 hours of standing out in front of a grocery store or at a festival, if you want to be on the committee and if you want to have a say in the direction of this campaign. So, like I said, we'll start out focusing on petitioning for the first few months and then start working our way down the list that I have here on this slide. And again, committee members will make decisions concerning these issues by consensus as we progress. But for now, I'd just like to touch on community building. Like I said a minute ago, the community is estranged after last year's raids. However, there are other groups working on things, and I think it important that we get in contact with these groups and work with these groups to see how we can bring healing to the cannabis community and positive reform to Spokane. So that's one thing we'll definitely be working on, is reaching out to other cannabis-related organizations and really building a true alliance here in Eastern Washington. So in conclusion, for now, my theme for the first few months is I-1, get her done, because if we don't get it on the ballot, like I said, it's just an idea on a piece of paper. So we gotta get our boots on the ground. We gotta pound the pavement and get this petition on the ballot first and foremost. And so we're going to have opportunity to get started right away here, and I hope you'll join me on Wednesday, March 14th or Saturday, March 17th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Shadle Park Walmart, and we'll kick off the petition drive there. And then also be sure to join us at our next meeting 1 week from Monday, which will be Monday, March 19th from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Spokane Entrepreneurial Center, and there'll be a link to a map under this video in order to providing directions to this location. So again, if you're viewing this online, we do have a meeting on March 12th, so be sure to come to that meeting. That's our first meeting, and that's actually this PowerPoint presentation that I'm presenting to you right here online will be represented in person at the meeting on March 12th at the Spokane Entrepreneurial Center. But there'll also be time for questions and answers, and then also brainstorming and just figuring out who can commit to that 8 hours a month, and then who can commit to supporting our campaign in other ways. So I look forward to seeing you guys at the first meeting or subsequent meetings, and I hope that you guys can join me at Walmart this Wednesday and this Saturday, again from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Shadle Park Walmart, to kick off the Spokane I-1 marijuana regulation petition drive. I'm Ian Moody. Thank you for joining me. Have a good day.